All right. Good afternoon, everyone. It's 2 minutes past two, so I think we'll get going. I hope everybody can hear me. I know most people are familiar with me. Kate Colleen White is my name. I'm the REO for Dublin Midlands. Leslie, you have your hand up? Okay. Leslie, if you want to come in.
Kate, the functionality is through the Q&A. So Leslie, you're going to have to put in a question through the Q&A and we'll come back to you or we'll answer it at the Q&A section.
Thank you. Thank you, Arlene. And I'm just making sure everybody can actually hear me. All right, so thank you very much for joining this afternoon, colleagues. I just wanted to take a moment to speak clearly about what this next step of change represents for us as a region, as leaders within the Dublin Midlands Health Region, and of course, as leaders of the many, many services that are delivered right across the region each and every single day. You'll be glad to hear that we haven't prepared a detailed presentation today, because I'm very aware that so many of you on this call are already deeply familiar with the design work and the work that has brought us to this point already. So the purpose of this engagement this afternoon really is about ensuring clarity, reinforcing direction, and keeping us aligned as we all move into the next phase of the change programme and the reform programme. So the main speakers and presenters this afternoon are indeed the IHA leads, who you are all familiar with. That's Mary O'Kelly, who is the IHA manager for Kildare West Wicklow. Mary is also, as you know, the lead IHA manager for the overall ISD design. And we're also joined by Ms. Orla Claffey, who is the IHA manager for Dublin South West. Ms. Carol Broadbank, the IHA manager for the Midlands. And today, this afternoon, we're also joined by Mr. Brian Carney, who is acting as the IHA manager for Dublin South City and West today. So in the main, the presenters this afternoon will be the 4 IHA managers. There are other members of the regional leadership team on the call, and if necessary, we can bring those individuals in and out over the course of the engagement if required. But for the moment, most people will have their camera off and will be on mute just to safeguard the integrity of the IT system. So what I'm going to do then is just say a couple of opening remarks, and then I will hand over to Mary O'Kelly, our lead for the ISD design, and the remainder of the IHA managers. So again, I would like to thank you all for joining today. The standing up of our integrated service leads, also known as our ISLs, and the ongoing appointment of general managers for our community health areas right across the region is an important milestone. It reflects months of preparation across every IHA and indeed across the region. And I know that many of you have been involved in that. But I also want to be explicit this afternoon. This is only the beginning of the next stage of our process. It is by no means the completion of our reform, and in an actual fact, much of the work has yet to happen. What we are introducing now are slight structured changes since the 3rd of March, that's yesterday, the first elements of what will become a more fully integrated service model over time. These changes are incremental and deliberately so, as they are designed to be manageable. Engagement will continue with individuals right across the region as further adjustment and reform evolves over time, and we will work through each step together. Since yesterday, we are putting the next layer of foundations in place to deliver and start delivering and operating in a new way. But the real reform, as I said, the cultural change, the new behaviours, the relationships that we have to continue to build, and the integrated decision making will develop over the months ahead. And of course, that is the work that will truly change how care is delivered. I've already said that the changes are deliberately incremental and designed to be manageable. because I think it's important to acknowledge that all of this is happening in an environment that is already incredibly challenging. And I do appreciate that. I think it's important to acknowledge that recruitment remains difficult, retention is demanding, agency conversion is slow and resource intensive, and we have real gaps and continue to have real gaps on the front line. And there's also pressure to deliver savings and deliver within budget without compromising the very good care that's delivered right across the region every single day. And I think it's important to mention that because it is accepted that these realities are not abstract. They do affect you and your teams and your services every day. And I do want to acknowledge the pressure you are under and the leadership you continue to show despite it. And I guess that is why the next stage of the reform is so important. I think it's important to acknowledge that we are not expecting perfection on day one. We are expecting progress, steady movement, learning, problem solving and adjustment over the months ahead as we start to progress with the next layer and the next layer of reform. And of course, we are expecting many issues to arise, many gaps or considerations that need to be discussed. And what I want to say is we are committed to working through these issues with you. I think it's important that people understand that this is just the start of the next stage, as I said. I want to take this opportunity also, before I hand over to Mary, to sincerely thank you all. Your professionalism, resilience and quiet determination are what keeps this region moving forward. Every day you step up, often under enormous pressure, as I said, and you continue to deliver high quality care to the people we serve. And that is something you should all be proud of. The reform is about supporting you to do all of that work more effectively. It is about clearer accountability, stronger local decision making and truly integrated care. And it is about giving our population a service that is easier to navigate, more joined up and indeed more responsive. The majority of the next phases of the reform programme will progress through what we call the LIGs, or the local implementation groups that are chaired by each of the 4 IHA managers. I think it's important to recognise that not everyone is part of these LIGs. And if you are not part of the LIG, it is important that you stay close to your line manager, ask the questions about what has been discussed at the LIGs and what decisions are being made at those LIGs, and ensure you influence that work through your existing reporting lines. Communication and connection will be essential as we move forward and as we move forward together. So over the coming months, my ask of you is to stay close to your IHAs, engage in the LIG process where you are members of the LIG, either directly, where you are members, as I have said, or through your line manager. Raise challenges early, because we know there are going to be difficulties, we know there are going to be gaps, and we know there are going to be challenges. And it's important that you feel comfortable to raise those so we can tackle them. It's also important that we all continue to support our teams through this period of uncertainty and continue to lead with the calm, steady influence that has brought us safely to this point. The months ahead will require us to be flexible, focused and united. But I do believe that we have the leadership and the commitment and the capability to navigate this successfully. And I believe the future we are building is one we will be able to stand over with pride. So just some housekeeping then for today. I will introduce Mary O'Kelly, who has been leading on the ISD design for the region and the IHA managers. As I said, each IHA manager will then speak around the changes within their IHA and the next stages of the design that will be managed, as I said, through the local implementation groups. The session is live and is being recorded. The recording will be shared on our regional staff newsletter, which is to circulate later this week. The comms team are monitoring the question and answers function, and Mary O'Kelly will kindly chair that section and direct the questions to the relevant IHA or indeed the relevant member of the RLT. It is our intention to get through the speakers as quickly as we can, but as effectively and as efficiently as we can, because we have heard from you that the more important section of these updates are the questions and answers sessions. So we will get to that as effectively and as efficiently as we can. And just if we can't answer a question here today, we will get an answer and share that with the local implementation groups who can then cascade the information out. As I said, many members of the RLT are also on. Those who are not presenting will be on mute, and as I said, their cameras are turned off. And that is just necessary to ensure that we can preserve the integrity of the IT and also ensure that each of the IHA managers gets to speak. So thank you very much, as I said, for joining today. And at this point, I am going to hand over to Miss Mary O'Kelly. Thank you, Mary.
Thanks, Kate. And good afternoon, everybody. I just see on my laptop now that there's 516 people on the call. So thank you very much for your time and attention. And can I just give a shout out to the comms team who are in the background here. And as Kate said, we may not be able to get to all of the questions. I'll do my best. But the comms team are actually going to write down the questions that come in, and we will get those answers out if we haven't answered them in the session. So as Kate said, I'm Mary O'Kelly. I'm the IHA manager for Kildare and West Wicklow, and I'm also one of 6 across the regions who work with the Organisational Change Unit, so the OCU, with regard to the ongoing design of our integrated service delivery model. So I know that we previously presented on the model, but just by way of quick overview again, there were 4 key components to the model, and this region has signed up, I suppose, in terms of assurance that we are aligned to that. So the first one was a flat structure, so that the number of management layers will be minimised to keep decision making close to the service user and the patient, and that roles reporting to our 4 IHA managers would vary in grade proportionate to the level of responsibility. The next one was then a population focus, so a geographic approach through the integrated management of high volume community healthcare areas and community teams across a geography to meet the needs of the local population. And then that we would have specialist and regulated services grouped and delivered across the IHA to streamline like activity to draw on expertise and protect parts of the current structure that work really well. And then the third one that was nationally agreed was the network of care, and that the networks of care will be developed to drive service user and patient centre approach and to look at quality, safety and integrated clinical leadership across services and care settings in the IHA and across the wider region. So as I say, we've signed up to that in Dublin and Midlands. So where we're at now, for Dublin and Midlands, as Kate said, regionally, we've set up our 4 local implementation groups, 1 in each IHA, so commonly known as LIGs, and they're really task and finish groups to help us design and implement the way forward, and we'll be setting up our management teams in the 4 IHAs. We've interviewed and have our heads of service coming in, and their future titles will be Integrated Service Leads or ISLs. So again, as I've said in previous meetings, there's a lot of acronyms and we'll break them down as we go. So the heads of service will be known as ISLs or Integrated Service Leads. And they're either in place or they're incoming at the moment. We have also interviewed our general managers, and so there will be people on the call today who will be coming into new posts as CHA, Community Healthcare Area General Managers. And it's also been confirmed nationally that the regional disability lead will be at Assistant National Director level. So we're waiting finalisation of that job description before we proceed to advertise and recruit in this region. While we've scoped out the portfolios in the main for the 4 IHE managers and the heads of service at that integrated service lead level, within IHAs, we'll continue to refine those portfolios, particularly when the GMs come on board. So what we've agreed in the region in order to safely allow integrated management structures to go live is that we will align the heads of service and the reporting relationships and transition to new integrated service lead portfolios, that the existing and new general managers don't realign until recruitment has been finalised, that the delegated authority remains with the existing heads of service unless other arrangements have been communicated. For example, there may be a head of service who is not going to be in the region in the future. So they're leaving the region and we'll put alternative arrangements in place. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our heads of service. They're really working with positive intent, moving, looking at their new portfolios, but holding the current delegation that they have for their care group. So we have some official language around that nationally. And so what we've been told is that during the transition period, existing delegations will remain in place to support stability. And that as the IHAs continue to embed and operational responsibilities shift to new management structures, regions may request targeted, time-bound adjustments to delegation through the National Delegations Office, okay, to ensure alignment with evolving boundaries. And so further guidance on full delegation will issue to us in the coming weeks. Okay, so it's important for our heads of service and our clinical leadership and our management structures to understand that the as-is stays in place for the moment. And then we also have agreed some interim business partnering models between the IHAs and key enabling functions, so particularly finance, HR and QPS. And we'll be looking at the other really important enabling functions in the coming weeks. So for the moment, nothing will hugely change until the general managers come on board. And I want to be really clear with everybody that we will engage with individuals then through their line managers as changes progress. So just some more national updates. The future reporting model for the disciplines within nursing, the HSCPs, and medical and dental has been agreed at that head of service level, so the ISLs. And so it's intended to provide for minimal change to the existing professional governance arrangements. And where there are any adjustments to reporting lines, they don't reduce the grade to which the staff report. Where changes do apply, they maintain equivalence of level or have been elevated to senior grades, okay, consistent with the intent to strengthen clinical leadership and support integrated service delivery. So I will hold my hands up at this stage to our medical and dental colleagues. We do need to do that engagement with you, with Paul Ridgway and the clinical leadership team. We have had an engagement with the disciplines in nursing and the disciplines in the HSEP sphere. And I really want to thank you for all your input, because your input actually helped influence this decision at a national level. And we had a really robust return from you all, so thank you for that. The other thing that has been asked is, what does this look like where we, particularly for community health care areas, CHO7 and CHO8? So just to say that nationally there is work ongoing with regard to the naming of our community health care areas, and there will be standardisation of email addresses. So we will let you know more as it progresses. But at the moment, we're really looking at removing those tags of numbers. So say CHN number 1, which happens in the Midlands and in the former DSKWW. And we will be talking about geographies. So for example, in Kildare, West Wicklow, we'll be talking about Northeast Kildare, Southeast Kildare, Southwest Kildare, whatever the local geography is. Okay, so it'll be more meaningful to both all of you and to our service users and our patients. So I suppose the big question, as Kate said, is what happens from yesterday the 3rd. So number one is that new ways of working will begin. So that's what yesterday is, a starting date. So around the countries, some IHAs will have enough senior managers in place to start the new model. And in some areas, it will begin in phases and backup plans are already in place. And I'll talk to that a little bit later in terms of Kildare West Wicklow. We're looking for services to work more closely together. So the aim is that we work in a more joined up way to better meet the needs of the local communities. It means less working in silos and more coordination between teams and services. Engagement with our staff, our most valuable resource, as I've said before. So there's been a lot of engagement with and discussion with trade unions about new reporting arrangements, especially for senior clinical leaders. And those conversations will continue as new structures bed in. And that's just something really important in terms of our Chief People Officer, Anne-Marie Hoey, and team, and the organisational change unit working with the unions at a national level. And then we also have a joint union management engagement at a regional level where issues that arise can be addressed. Communication. So it's the most important thing that we can do at the moment. So we want to continue communication at a regional and an IHA level, and that will be prioritised. And this will continue so everyone understands the changes and what they mean for their work. But I think you should all take Kate up on her challenge, and it is a challenge, to keep connected in through your line manager and ask the questions of your local leagues as well. So the change will take time, as Kate said. So the 3rd of March is not a final step. It is actually the start. It's a milestone on a longer journey. So more work will continue this year to strengthen teams, to improve our structures, and to finalise frameworks like clinical governance. And so the central team and the OCU, they'll keep meeting with regions and IHA leads like me every 2 weeks. And we will bring issues as they arise to those meetings to help identify the issues and keep everybody aligned around the country. And that's what our leagues will do across the 4 IHAs. Okay, so we will draw a line on that, if you like, because I have 2 hats on today. So one as the lead and one then to talk about Kildare West Wicklow. So in Kildare West Wicklow, what will happen from yesterday? So we've been in a preparation mode, I suppose, for a good while now, and we commenced our LIG, our local implementation group, in October. And I just really want to thank everybody who attends the LIG, representing the wider system, I suppose, because there's been huge buy-in and huge commitment to it. So at the moment we meet weekly. Every second week we meet in person. And so every alternate week we meet online. And I'm delighted to say that as well as the care groups, so the heads of service and the general managers who have responsibility for services in Kildare West Wicklow, we did a key stakeholder analysis. And so we've identified all I suppose the enabling functions and discussed with the enabling functions in terms of their stakeholder piece on our LIG. And we have clinical, we have QPS, we have HR, finance and comms who attend weekly, and we've identified some critical work streams that we're working through as a LIG. In terms of the heads of service, those integrated service leads, I will have 2 in Kildare West Wicklow. I have one who commenced yesterday, and we had our induction session yesterday afternoon, so I'm delighted to say that Ger Pilo, so many people in Kildare West Wicklow and across the DSKWW area will know Ger. So Ger is one of those ISL leads, and Ger is going to take the portfolio for the integration of children's services and also for adult mental health. But in addition to that core portfolio, many of you who are in community care here traditionally, and I'm using that word in terms of all the care groups who would look at aids and appliances and demand-led schemes, would know that Ger and I set up what was called the RAG, the Regional Appliance Aids and Appliance Group, and it's a governance piece. And Ger is going to hold that, and we are going to work to make sure there's a structure in the IHAs and that there's a structure in the region. So that's quite a big piece of work in addition to her core work. The second head of service and ISL lead has been identified and hopefully is here today and is awaiting contract, and that will happen shortly. And that ISL will take the service lead for adults and older persons, so the CNUs, the hospice on the Curragh, and those services in community, including ICPOP and our chronic disease management team. And in addition, she will hold for the moment the line management for our GRIP team in DSKWW, that specialist older persons team that organises our short stay respite and our complex casework for older persons. And she will hold responsibility for the nursing home support office in Naas, and working with Dublin in the Midlands on looking at what a regional structure for the NHSS service could look like. So they're the two ISLs. I have 5 general managers, and I know some of you are on the screen and attended our leg on Monday, and that was really welcome. It's lovely for people to be involved from the start. Again, I won't name them individually pending them getting their contracts, but we are working towards that integrated service model for Kildare and West Wicklow. So we're working with the existing heads of service and the general managers to continually refine that heads of service portfolio and the line management responsibilities. I'd previously committed to the heads of discipline, the therapy managers, and all the operational managers in the services in Kildare, West Wicklow, that as we progress, we would meet in person. So tomorrow in Millennium Park, I have my 3rd in-person meeting, and I will talk to these portfolios more at that level, and then I will arrange, particularly for the teams in Kildare, West Wicklow, that we have more bespoke engagements over the coming weeks. So thank you very much, everybody, and I'm going to pass over to Carol. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary. I'm hoping people can see me and hear me. Thank you very much. My name is Carol Broadbank. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the IHA manager in the Midlands, which is the 4 counties of Laois, Offaly, Longford and Westmeath. I'd like to echo Mary's thanks for everyone so far who has been involved in helping us get to the point we're at now. It has been challenging, and each of the IHAs has different, I suppose, challenges and reconfiguration issues that all 4 of us have had to work together very strongly to make sure we have. So I have started my LIG meetings actually in early January, so I'm a little bit behind Mary. And we've been working as a group of heads of service and existing general managers in an environment where we are splitting from our former colleagues in Louthmeath. And so that adds a complexity into the Midlands that we've had to work through to make sure that we use the terminology in the Midlands of making sure people are plugged in, that they have a line management and a clear line of sight. So we've been working as a group of general managers and heads of service in the first instance to make sure that we are very clear on what services are staying, what services are not, how we manage that through the transitional period, and how we, I suppose, detach from Louthmeath, if that makes sense. So I have 3 ISL managers, and I think they're all on the call today. Marianne Tierney is new to the service for us, although not new to the former CHO8. Marianne has started with us on the 23rd of February, and she will be managing the mental health portfolio across the 4 counties of the Midlands. A complex piece, and what we've tried to do to make sure over the next 8 weeks is that we hold things safely. And so Marianne will still hold the wider portfolio of mental health services. And I'll explain a little bit more about that when I go on to look at the children's services ISL responsibility, so that we transition very safely, and that we anticipate and manage risk for changing services as we move through the next 8 weeks. So along with Marianne, there is Donal Fitzsimons, who will be holding the portfolio of adults and older persons. And like Marianne, he will hold on to some of the services that he formerly had in his role as Head of Service of Older Persons in the former CHO8 over the next 8 weeks, with support from existing general management structures, to ensure that we transition the services in the right way. And there will also be some regional portfolios that the donor will hold. He will have some responsibility in terms of home support, working very closely with the other 3 IHAs in that regard, in terms of leading us towards the statutory piece. And then the third ISL integrated service lead that I have is Mary Gorman, who many of you will know has been the head of disability services across the former CHO8. And Mary will hold the portfolio of children, so 0 to 18. And she will also be responsible for some really nice projects like the SPOA, the single point of access piece. She'll also hold responsibility for the Midlands for Children First and some of the other kind of governance pieces around children. So each of the 3 ISLs are in, and we've started to do the work together in terms of making sure that, as I say, that everyone is plugged in and everyone is very clear where their line management sits. I think the most important thing to say, and both Kate and Mary have said it, is the 3rd of March is not the big bang. The 3rd of March has been our start in terms of the transition period. And it's really important for us as a group, and we've discussed it at our league, that we hold things safely. So Marianne will remain holding the CAMS teams. Donal is holding some of the older persons pieces that will move over into maybe into Marianne's service. And certainly Mary is going to hold on to the adult disability services over the next 8 weeks. They will be supported by existing general managers. And so I'm very grateful to the existing team of general managers who've agreed to stay with us over the next 8 weeks while we transition to the new structures with the incoming CHA leads. And so I think that's it. I think we have started to work with our next layer of management and leadership, which is certainly the heads of therapy and the other grade 8s across the Midlands. And I've had one engagement with them, and I'm planning to meet with them every fortnight and bring them into an information sharing and I suppose a collegiate forum where we can actually make sure that we address anyone's concerns, because as Mary said, you know, this feels, and I think Kate said, this feels very personal. It does, in terms of people's roles, but over the next 8 weeks things are not changing dramatically. We won't allow any risk to be not managed. We will mitigate things that appear, and we will do that with our teams. So the league is being set up, has been set up to address the initial portfolio changes because of the Louthmeath and former CHO8 split. We're now working together with our enabling services, finance, HR, QPS, to iron out how that, I suppose, that interoperability piece works between at each layer of the IHA, between our enabling services, to make sure that we are managing things in the right way and supporting people to lead their services. So that's it from me. Thank you ever so much. I'm sure there'll be questions. I'm going to hand over to Brian. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carol. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brian Carney. I'm the current acting IHA manager for Dublin South City and West, and I'm really excited to be here with you today as we commence this next phase of the implementation of what we call the integrated service delivery model. I suppose in terms of the integrated service leads, I just want to inform you that Mary McGrath has commenced with us as of this Monday. We're delighted to have Mary in our team, and Mary will have an integrated focus on adult services and some multi-IHA services such as disabilities, day opportunities, among other things. Kevin Brady has joined as well, and he'll have an integrated focus on children's services and multi-IHA services such as CAMS and the CAMS MHID service, along with other items in the portfolio. And then myself, I'll have an integrated focus on adult mental health and including the National Inpatient Addiction Unit, which we term as Cúndara, and our palliative care services and older person services with our Section 38 partner, our Ladies Hospice and Care Service. We are working through the contracting and recruitment of our community healthcare area general managers, and we're looking forward to welcome them onto the team. And as Mary has referenced, as the members join the team in relation to these portfolio services, we're going to refine what that portfolio looks like, and ensure that there's ongoing engagement with all persons affected by the change as we move forward. Similar to what's been described by my colleagues previously, in Dublin South City and West, we have our local implementation group in place and stood up and working very well in terms of supporting the next phase of this implementation. We have an engagement session planned with staff and senior managers for Friday the 13th in Cherry Orchard, and we're working through the processes that have been outlined and that we've developed in terms of providing assurance as we move through the actions needed to progress this change. As Kate and Mary have said, the existing delegations will remain in place until transitions are completed. And it's important, I think, for everyone to realise that the existing roles will hold the portfolios out of there to ensure that we have a safe transition. And as I've said to the team in the last few days, our priority remains that we need to ensure that we can deliver a safe service for our patients and service users during the change, ensure that we're all operating under clear governance structures throughout the change, and to support our most valuable asset, which is our staff, during this time of change, because it is a challenging time. I just want to especially thank you all for working with us on the next phase of the journey. As I say, we're all very excited to be at this point. There is going to be a transition of between 8 and 12 weeks as we move through this phase, and myself and the entire team remain available to support the teams throughout this. So I'm going to pass to my colleague Orla Claffey, who will talk to you about Dublin South West. Thank you.
Hi everybody, just getting my sound going. Can you all hear me? Hello, hi everybody. Okay, hi. So as Brian said, my name is Orla Claffey. I'm the IHE manager for Dublin South West. So I'm delighted to be here today as we start our journey together in terms of the next steps of the HSE reform under social care. So in Dublin South West, our league meetings are underway and we're working very closely with our existing heads of services and our existing general managers in terms of determining where the service will be defined from under the portfolios of the newly appointed integrated service leads. So I'm delighted to share with you Sabrina Kiernan has been appointed the ISL for Adult Services of Dublin South West. Niamh Quinlivan has been appointed as ISL Lead for Mental Health and Children's Services. There will be 4 general managers joining Dublin South West, and many of you know Lorraine Madden. I'm delighted to let you know Lorraine is joining the team as general manager for Clondalkin. The other 3 general manager posts are currently working through the recruitment process, and we hope to have appointed those people in the very near future. There's ongoing due diligence happening in preparation for the handover of the services aligned with the portfolios of the individuals. In terms of how the team at large will come together, there will be alignment of the ISLs, the general managers and our network managers in terms of updating and keeping everybody abreast of the progress that we're making in Dublin South West. And I really look forward to those engagements. I know my initial engagements with the relevant team members has been very exciting, and I'm very optimistic about the great work that we can do together. Carl has mentioned the work that's happening from the Dublin South West enabling functions as well, and that's a very critical piece of work for us as well, and very happy with the work that's happening across our colleague domain in Dublin South West. So I just want to say thank you to everybody for supporting me so far as we've come this far in the journey, and I'm looking forward to working with you all as we get to our next steps of the journey in Dublin South West. So thank you all.
Thanks very much, Orla. Just for everybody on the call, I can see on my screen anyway, 567 participants. So again, thank you very much, everybody. So just in terms of questions, we haven't got any at the moment. You do need to use the question and answer function on your taskbar and not the chat one. Okay, the chat one is disabled. I'm really happy to answer anything I can or pass it to the relevant member of our regional leadership team. But equally, we'd acknowledge that, you know, there's with nearly 600 people on, it's a brave step to ask a question, and it may not be for everybody. So we are going to, as Kate said, send out a newsletter, and we're going to send out this recording, and we are going to send back a feedback session. And no more than I talked about, particularly for the HSCPs and the nurses who fed back to us with regard to line management operating model, we'd really welcome any feedback that you have if you don't wish to post it here today, or any questions that you would have. But we'd also ask you through your line manager, as Kate said, to raise any issues you might have or any queries as a result of today with your line manager, who can feed those in through their line manager if they are not sitting on the lake. You will know who the representative in your area is. It will be either at a general manager or a head of service level. We have the integration lead for HSCPs, Mary, who I think is going to remain doing some work even though she's taking on a new role. Eileen Whelan and team, we have a nurse representative. Lisa sits on it for QPS in Kildare, West Wicklow. Martina O'Byrne sits on mine, and I know David Tully is on this call and sits on others for HR. And Joe, our Regional Director of Finance, has representation on the legs as well. So please don't hesitate to feed up any query you might have into that leg structure. So I think, do we have some questions incoming? No, I can't see any.
No, I can't see any either.
Yes,
No.
Mary.
Oh,
Yeah, there's a question. Can I ask, will we receive a communication confirming ISL, leg names and roles, etc.? And that's from Catherine Lynch.
oh, so hi, Catherine. So yes, actually, so I know you report in through Joe, and yes, so each leg will have a terms of reference, including participation. And the minutes of the legs are circulated to the members. And I'm very happy, as I know Carol, Brian and Orla are, for those minutes to be circulated throughout Teams as well, because I think that's really important in terms of keeping people updated as we move. So yes, we can absolutely do that.
And we can do that, Mary, across the 4 legs. I think
That's what I'm saying,
yeah.
across the 4. And so they'll issue, yeah, absolutely. That's not a
So
problem.
there's another question, Mary, and forever. Is there an update on the integrated corporate and clinical governance framework completion and implementation? And that's from Eilish Hardiman.
Sorry, no. Say that again, read that out again.
Is there an update on the integrated corporate and clinical governance framework completion and implementation?
So I don't have an update on that at the moment. I know that our region, and I think particularly Sharon Sheehan, is representing the region in terms of that national piece. And that will be critical to updates as soon as we have that. The other thing I should have said is that we do know that there are operating models that have been looked at, or new ways of doing things across the former care groups. And so as soon as they are signed off nationally, we'll also be bringing that update to you. So I can see there's another query. Could we provide a visual for the new structural change? Absolutely. So for Julianne, who asked that question, it's a really important consideration. And we do have a visual. I'm going to say we need to make it more more presentable, but through each leg we do have that visual in terms of, and I will be showing that tomorrow for Kildare, West Wicklow, and I know the other IHA managers will be looking at that with their teams in their areas for their IHA. So it will show my structure, and it will also show the portfolios that we have agreed to date.
Mary, there's just a question from Bridget Fagan. Can I ask what the plan for home care within KWW home care services and the recruitment of healthcare assistants?
So Bridget, actually, we do know that actually the Kildare, West Wicklow, as well as the Midlands, has put in a bid into the service plan. So we're hoping to get additional care assistance, and the ISL lead, the head of service, who's coming in to integrate the adults and older person services, will be looking at what we do operationally, including the direct provision home support in Kildare, West Wicklow, with the team in Hawthorne House over the coming months.
I think I could come in on that as well, just from a broader strategic perspective, because I think it's well known that Ireland's home care sector is experiencing significant recruitment and retention pressure, and that's driven by the high demand, ageing population, and indeed the instability in how home support services are structured and funded. So there's quite a bit across 4 fronts really that we need to focus on. The first being stabilising the workforce through pay, conditions and consistency and things like that, expanding the use of permanent HSE contracts instead of solely relying on private provision, standardising hours, rostering and travel time, and accelerating the rollout of the statutory home support scheme so that we can continue to make the sector more competitive. And in order to do that also, there's the necessity to continue to partner with the ETBs, SkillNet, the community colleges, to build a long-term talent pipeline, but also a pipeline that focuses on promoting career progression and that piece around professional identity, and so that we can strengthen recruitment through national campaigns in order to build our teams within the home care sector. Really important. Really important in the context of the services that are delivered on the front line every single day. And it's really imperative now that we reduce any operational barriers to recruitment in the home care sector. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. I can see one there. Sorry, they're coming in now. So I can see one. And again, I know the person asking the question, and there have been several services which it hasn't been confirmed what IHA manager will take these. There's concern that there isn't representation for these services at RLT level. When will it be confirmed what IHA manager will take these services? And so I'm wondering if these services are close to home for the individual. So what I would say is that our change and innovation team, so many of you know Sharon and Lena, worked with Carol in the Midlands, and actually Brian was at that meeting for Trevor's area, and Orla and I, to actually finalise a lot of the IHA portfolio. So I think, Paula, you will find that perhaps the services you were talking about it has been agreed what IHA manager is taking them now. But of course, we did a lot through our care group workshops and through the due diligence. But we know that, and I said this around the table at the leg, due diligence is a starting point, because often when we put it on paper, we go, oh, I forgot this, I forgot that. And so the due diligence is live. And so we're working to capture, as people go, oh, what about? We will capture it and we will discuss it and agree where it needs to go. We will do the due diligence and arrange the handover. Okay, but just for the moment, as Kate said, and I said, and Carol said, that piece, I suppose at the ops manager level, maybe that grade 8 level, things aren't changing at the moment, and certainly things won't change, as I said, with that agreement, that due diligence, and that engagement and handover. Okay. So I can see another question there. Can you comment on where and how engagement with Forsa is happening for heads of discipline, the grade 8s and below, structural changes and potential impact for their role? So I think Kate and I could probably answer that with perhaps David Tully, his input in terms of, so we know that this is happening at a national level, as I said. So Anne-Marie Hoey, as our Chief People Officer, and her team and the Organisational Change Unit are working with all the unions, meeting with all the unions, including Forsa. We then have our regional joint union management forum where we will discuss these. And then for those heads of discipline and those grade 8s, we will be engaging through your line management structure with you with regard to any potential structural and or line management changes as we work through those phases. I hope that answers that. Kate or David, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, thanks, Mary. I think you've articulated that there are multiple touch points in the system, both nationally and regionally, through which those engagements are happening. And earlier on in the discussion, we outlined the JUMP, which is the Joint Union Management Forum, also that operates between the regional leadership team and our union partners and colleagues, and the issues can be discussed there also. But specifically for individuals, it would be through the line management, and David can come in as well. David, if we've missed anything. Thank you, David.
Thanks very much, Kate. No, I don't think you've missed anything other than to say that the principles that were agreed at the outset of this for reassignment, redeployment, etc., they still apply and will, and both unions and the HSE are engaged on extending that part of the deal so that we can continue to engage as we have done to date.
Thank you, David. Thanks, you, Mary.
David. I see a question there. Are there plans for region-wide recruitment optimisation comparable to previous national campaigns? And if so, how can teams contribute to shaping that approach? So can I just say that is a really welcome question, and thank you. And I think that is something that it's fair to say Kate as Oreo has advocated, as have we in the past, and we continue to. And David, I don't know if you want to come in there to add to that, but I do know that the region, where national campaigns are devolving to a regional basis, and you're working on that. So you might like to
correct,
just
Mary.
Update.
Thank you. That is correct, Mary. So that the regional campaign and the notion of same is something we hold close and will work toward. We're currently working with our colleagues in National Recruitment Service to take charge of certain panels that might apply to this region, and on a graduated basis use those in that fashion and then replace them with region-wide panels over the period. That's an ongoing piece of work, not insignificant, but it's certainly something we're moving toward, and a key sort of element of our HR plans going forward.
Thank you, David. And also, if I might just say, I really think that that's a really welcome question, because under the new health regions model, regional campaigns, they're not a kind of a nice to have. They are actually essential infrastructure for ensuring that people can actually find, use and benefit from the services that are available to them. And of course, that's fully aligned to the core Sláinte Care aim of delivering access to care closer to home. So for recruitment colleagues and HR colleagues, it's an essential infrastructure that we have to progress, because of course recruitment means more people, and more people means access, and we're all here to drive access to care, and that's fundamentally the biggest single driver and purpose of the teams within the regions. So I think, and importantly, it's important to state in that local needs do differ, and we understand that there's local demographics, local service availability, local inequities, local cultural and linguistic context that all need to be considered. But regional campaigns can let us respond to local needs also. So it's important to acknowledge that. And really, regional campaigns will enable us to reduce inequalities by targeting those communities with lower access, which, as I said, is what we're here to try and drive and fundamentally deliver for the population of Dublin Midlands. So I'm very glad to see that question coming up. It's really important. Thank you.
And so there are other questions, but I can see that there's a related question, so I might go straight to that one. And it's, can you update us regarding what plan is for HSCP staff grade campaigns 2026, if this has been handed back to the regions from NRS, and whether HR departments have the capacity to run these campaigns in a timely fashion like NRS did, which are normally planned around dates new grads complete their exams or placements. So again, a related question, but I suppose more specific, David, perhaps to the HSCP staff grade campaigns.
Okay, thanks, Mary. And again, I should echo the thanks for the questions, giving us an opportunity to tell you to our plans for recruitment. The short answer to your question is yes. The capacity exists, and the panels will transfer. Not all of them and not immediately, and that's part of an agreement that's ongoing with the National Recruitment Services, with a focus being on refreshing panels, just as would have happened in the past, rather than closing down and starting new panels, allowing for continuity and allowing us to attract around the graduates as that period of the academic year comes to its end. So we will be moving in that fashion. And we'll have more detail on that, and we're going to use the good offices of our communications colleagues through our newsletter to maybe update people on that as we gain more of, I suppose, agreement and understanding with national recruitment colleagues on it.
Great, David. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Okay, so there's a question there. Are there any anticipated changes for daycare for the older persons? So I think the short answer is no. And the longer answer really connects in with what Kate said about home support. So really as part of this, we really recognise the importance of daycare for older persons, particularly in that shift to maintain people at home, living their best lives at home for as long as possible. And so if anything, our role, and I think I'm speaking for the 4 IHA managers really, will be to strengthen daycare and I suppose strengthen the governance, the quality of daycare for our older service users and those who are in need of those services. Kate, I don't know if you, well, I can see you on screen. I think you might want to say something.
No,
Not
I
sure.
just think it's, thank you, Mary. I just think obviously, you know, it's such a fundamental part of service provision for our older persons within the region, and it's provided directly by the HSE. And are indeed through the voluntary providers funded by the HSE. So an important stakeholder group in the context of service provision. You know, so in the short, as you said, it's no, but long term, we need to continue to reform, I guess, how we're delivering services to ensure that we're supporting that independent living and aging close to home and as close to home as possible, reducing pressure on hospitals and long-term care, which will continue to be, you know, a fundamental, I suppose, priority for us. And of course, then day services that are placed at really at that local community level contribute directly to those integrated care pathways that we're, you know, we're in the process of rolling out in terms of culture, how we do business, focusing on prevention, rehabilitation and early intervention. And so they're all kind of, you know, visible, localized examples of what's happening on the ground. But as things move, as we progress and as we continue to become more person-centered, local and integrated, then, you know, models of care can and will change. I think the biggest challenge we have is the variability and access challenges with particularly in day services where there are some insufficient places in some areas. There's the transport gaps, the staffing pressures within the providers, and the age and infrastructure in some day centres. All of that are things that we have to work on in the context of reducing variation and improving consistency and access across geographies, which is really back into that space that I started with about the culture of reform and what this means for the people that we serve each and every single day. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Kate. Arlene, I'm just going to do a time check. We have another few questions. I think we could answer them today.
Yeah,
if that's
absolutely.
okay. Great.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can see one here. And again, I just want to say thank you for the questions because actually they're things we have thought about. They are meaningful, and so I appreciate you bringing them up. But this one is, there was mention of opportunity to work in a joined up manner and work in less of a silo manner. This is welcomed. In terms of population needs of community healthcare areas where there are no staffing in community healthcare networks to meet the needs of children, for example, will the changes bring opportunity to geographical areas for the children of the networks within the high volume services? So I'm going to invite Carol and Orla and Brian to come in on this, but I will start by saying absolutely. And I suppose that was one of our key pieces in the way we've designed our briefs for the IHAs and the ISLs is really integrated of things like children's services. Kate Azorio is really on the record in terms of, you know, that critical need to make sure that early starts in life are our needs are well met. And I'm not talking about early intervention in terms of the numbers a week. I'm talking about early intervention in life, and that will build the capacity for future generations to be well. So there is that capacity. We've also discussed at RLT. We have a lot happening, moving through pay bill. And I know it's hard to see it at a local level and it might seem slow, but things are, we are improving. And I suppose what we talked about at RLT was actually identifying those areas where there's less service in place and prioritising areas and/or disciplines for recruitment in that context. So Orla, Carol and Brian, I wonder if you want to come in there. Orla, will I, or sorry, Carol, you're top of my screen. Carol, do you want to come in first? Carol might be, oh, here she is.
Yes,
coming in.
I'm here. Apologies. Yeah. I mean, I'd welcome that approach, Mary, and I think it'd be really important that we bring our teams with us on that journey and speak to them about their critical issues around, where things really need to be joined up in terms of that approach. Yeah, absolutely. I think it really needs to come from the ground upwards in terms of informing us what we need to prioritize. That would be my view. Yeah.
And Brian, I know that you've done a lot of work with across the 4 IHAs. Sorry, Kate, were you going to come in there before I bring in Brian?
Brilliant, Brian. It's okay. Yeah, thank you.
So Brian, do you want to comment?
Yeah, I suppose, Mary, it's one of the benefits of the way we're trying to work moving forward is that the previous criticisms of this divide by 9 scenario, where maybe resources and resources being allocated were being just divide by 9 and sent out, not matching where the actual healthcare need was a challenge that we wanted to get through. And we have seen the change in practice within the region in that recently with the work of the 4 IHAs in terms of the allocation of resource for primary care waiting list initiative, for example, where we took a very data-driven and clinical need approach to what we were doing. And we didn't allocate it a divide by 4 situation. We looked at where the greatest need was based on the criteria set out by the Minister and by the waiting list initiative nationally. And we allocated the resources accordingly. So I think there are great opportunities to be done. It's only one example of it. But I think in terms of the healthcare needs and even some of the work that we're now doing with public health in terms of that population-based need, there is a lot of opportunity there in the future. And we've already delivered some. So
thank you, Brian. Orla, and then maybe Kate. Oh, sorry, Kate.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Putting the Oreo out, yeah.
No, not at all. And I'm very cognizant of the time. But I'm actually I would like to speak about this because I think it's important that we speak directly about the issue of staffing gaps across the region and about the inequity that can result in when some services are stretched more thinly than others. And I think it's important to acknowledge the reality that not every team in the region has the same level of staffing and not every team is carrying the same level of pressure. Some areas are managing vacancy levels that are just simply too high, while others are closer to what we would consider as being fully staffed. And that imbalance does create frustration and most importantly, risk for our patients and service users. So I suppose the question is, how are we going to deal with that inequity fairly and transparently while keeping our services safe? And I think it's important that we start with visibility. So under the health region and indeed under the IHA structures, having the ability to look across the entire service and see clearly and objectively where the gaps are, where the risks are, and where the teams are under disproportionate pressure. That visibility is really essential because inequity becomes entrenched when gaps remain kind of hidden or not escalated. And so we cannot allow that to happen. And then I think it's back to the discussion around recruitment, prioritising based on population need and risk, as opposed to on who shouts the loudest. And I wouldn't for a second suggest that happens in the region, but it is about having a consistent region-wide framework to assess where the staffing must be directed first and looking at things like vulnerability of the population served, the level of clinical and operational risk and access, particularly in rural or high deprivation areas. areas. So in the short term, you know, if there are those gaps and they're very significant and loaded risk, you know, we do have the ability now to move resources to where they are needed most. Difficult though that may be, to enable that or to mobilise such a rapid response. But that's something that we do need to consider. And in the medium term, then we need to fix the underlying recruitment and retention challenges. You know, some gaps are not temporary, they are structural, and we need to put in place those targeted recruitment campaigns, stronger local pipelines into, you know, HSCP and nursing, and support conditions then and develop conditions that support the retention so that we can protect the teams working with some of our most vulnerable cohorts and some of our most vulnerable children in the state. Thanks, Mary.
Thank you, Kate. And Orla.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Yeah, thank you for that. So look, I mean, a very firm believer in that the knowledge is coming from the front line and where the people are working directly with the patients. And I'm very clear in terms of my engagement with the teams that we will enhance the due diligence process that's in place. And we will take that intelligence in terms of actually applying our best steps in terms of actually filling the gaps that will become very evident to us as we move through the next few weeks of further drilling down into our due diligence as well. So we will continue to work very closely with everybody who's closer to the actual frontline impact of where we stand right now in terms of resources and recruitment processes.
Thank you, Orla. And just a related question, and it's not that I'm leaving others out. Would we have another 5 minutes, Arlene?
I think so, if everyone's okay. Yeah.
All right. So can you comment on plans for workforce planning for the HSCPs in the Dublin Midlands area and how heads of discipline will be facilitated to fully engage? So the good news is that we have a regional director for HSCPs incoming. I think, Kate, that person is starting in post in April, and that's a really welcome addition. We are sorry to be losing Mary from the integrated lead role for HSCPs, and we will be looking to recruit into that post. But we know that Mary brings huge wealth of knowledge to her new role, but will also, you know, be holding on to aspects of this. So we will be working across the 4 IHAs with the new director and the integrated lead with regard to that workforce plan for the region. Now that's a short answer for the person who asked, but we'll certainly pick that up again in the future. Do we have clarity yet on where the inter-CHO or HAA services such as audiology will sit? So Kieran, it's a really good question. Audiology, I know that, you know, we will be looking, and I'm using that word will for the future, be looking at regional services in terms of the prior CHO 6 and 7. We will be working with you and that region with regard to best fit for the future for services. And where services should sit at a regional level, we will be leaving them at a regional level, and where they should be at a CHA level, we will be looking at that. I know you say audiology never sat within a CHN structure, unlike some HSCPs. So for audiology, for you, your line management will remain at a head of service level. We are looking at the services being stabilised. I know that Orla is very passionate about that, which I'm delighted to hear, because it's been a long-standing concern of mine with regard to particularly audiology. And so we're looking to stabilise and strengthen that service within the region, and for you and your team in the Russell Centre. So there is another question here then in terms of, do we have
And Mary, sorry, just before you go on to that
Kate,
question,
yes.
it just so happened that I was speaking to an audiologist in the Midlands actually this morning. So noting as well that that service is quite vulnerable in the Midlands, and there's ongoing recruitment in Mullingar, I think it is, and in the Midlands, given the vulnerability of that service. So really important question in the context of audiology, but it's region-wide, the challenge there, I think, across both children and adults, and quite lengthy wait lists. So something we have to focus on. Yeah, thank you, Mary.
Thanks, Kate. So another question, similar to your template for all management structures, do you have a template of numbers of frontline staff per discipline for each network? We do. So just to say that as part of a really robust due diligence. Each head of service did a due diligence, particularly in primary care, because I feel like the majority of network staff sit there, and older persons, disabilities and mental health have done the same. And we do have that. And added to that, we do have the number of, if I say, approved vacancies as well per network. So that links back to what the IHA managers and Kate have been saying in terms of help drive our decision making about recruitment. But yes, we do have that, and we have it for all disciplines. And then the last question I'll take today, last question, has a decision been made whether disability services are coming under the disability lead or under the IHA? So services like case management, services like RCD&Ts will be within the IHA structure. We do have, as we said, the regional disability lead coming, and there will be some specific services that will be aligned, including our AON. I suppose while the AON will operate in the CHAs, the governance for the AON officers will be through the new disability lead, and we're getting some additional resources nationally under the service plan to support that new disability lead. And we will be getting some resources that are coming into each of the regions for review of particularly our placements and our Section 38 and costs. And so they will be aligned to the regional lead as well. That job description is being finalised. So I suppose we don't really have sight of the exact, broad breadth and depth of the disability lead, but we definitely know there are some structures coming under those, and others will fall into the IHAs and the CHAs. So,
thanks, Mary.
I think they're the majority of questions, actually, and well done, everybody. Thanks, you got them in, and I hope we got through most of them at least. I think there may be some incoming, but we will pick them up and we will feed back on them. Perfect. So, Kate, will I hand back to you?
Thank you very much, Mary, and thank you, Arlene, and thank you to all for contributing and for the questions. And just as we finish up, just to leave you, I suppose, with one final piece, and that's that the future of the Dublin Midlands region will be shaped not by structures or diagrams, and of course we can all send those out, but by you and the people on this call. And it's important to acknowledge your leadership, your judgment, your resilience and your commitment to the people we serve each and every single day. And you indeed are the driving force behind everything we are building. Today, as we've repeatedly said, it marks a milestone, but it really is only the starting point. The real reform, the cultural shift, the joined up decision making, the new ways of working will be built step by step in the months ahead. And it will be built by leaders who show up with courage, steadiness and purpose, leaders like everybody here today, and leaders who ask questions and engage and support what we're trying to do here. So I do want to thank you again. I know the pressures you face are very, very real. I know the recruitment challenges, the service gaps, the financial pressures, the competing demands are a challenge to keep going in, but you do keep going and you keep leading and you keep delivering very safe, compassionate and reliable care. And that is exceptional leadership. And I do want you all to hear that. So as we move forward, we are not aiming for perfection, but for momentum. We will not avoid the challenges because we know they will come up, and it's important that we face them together, and it's important that you know the structures within which you can raise them. And we will not lose sight, I guess, of why all of this reform matters, and that's to ensure that we have better outcomes for our communities and better support for our teams. So again, just to reiterate, my ask of you all is to stay close to your IHAs, feed into the legwork either directly or through your line management structures, raise the issues early, support the teams through uncertainty and continue to do that, and keep bringing the confident leadership that has brought us to this point. I do believe that we will get there. We have the strength and the capability and the unity to navigate this next phase and deliver the service that we can stand over with pride. So again, just my utmost thanks to you all for the work that you do every single day. It's that makes this region function, not just function actually, but continue to move forward. And I want to thank you most sincerely for that. Thank you, everybody.